Hello and welcome back to the very latest episode of the Love Machine podcast. Now, today we're going to be diving into a topic that affects so many of us in the modern dating world: burnout in dating and relationships. Have you ever felt exhausted by your search for love or found yourself emotionally drained in your relationship? Well, you're not alone. A recent study found that over 50% of singles experience dating burnout after just 3 months of active searching. But don't worry, this episode is not just about doom and gloom. We're here to help you reignite your passion and discover how to navigate through those tough times with ease. And today, to help me, I have the fantastic Charlene Gisele, and she is a former big law litigator turned clinical hypnotherapist, burnout advisor and high performance coach. Charlene empowers high-achieving professionals to prevent and recover from burnout without having to sacrifice their careers. And the power of her approach is not just to work less, it's about recovering more, which is why her expertise has been featured in many major publications and is sought after by world-leading organisations and professionals. So get ready to learn strategies to help recharge your love life, your life in general, rediscover your spark and your zest for life, and fall back in love with you and your life. How are you doing?
I'm delighted to be here and so touched by this wonderful introduction. Thank you for having me on the Love Machine.
I am really, you say it so nicely. Say that again, the love machine. So
The
you had
Love
to,
Machine.
oh, that sounds amazing. You say that so well. That's amazing. Thank you for that. I should get you to record my new intro. That'd be really cool.
Well, let's do that.
Let's do that another time. Very busy day for us today. You're doing my podcast. I'll be doing yours afterwards to guest on that. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'm saying that so we can cross promote in this episode. Why not? Why not mention that now? Look out for that. And we can explain that more later on. Now, I'm so pleased to have you here. You are a burnout expert, aren't you? And so tell me a bit more about you. Whereabouts are you based and how did you get into this?
Based in London, and it is an unusual profession title. Very often, when I walk into an organization and saying I'm a burnout advisor, I have a few eyebrows raising and thinking, "Are you teaching people how to burn out? What does a burnout advisor do?"
Yeah.
And if I'm being completely candid with you, I created a profession that I wish existed back when I burnt out. I burnt out a very long time ago, long enough for it to have been very much a stigma, much more now, much more then than it is now. And I felt completely isolated. I also layered that burnout experience with a very traumatic divorce experience. I was married across multiple jurisdictions. Not that a divorce is not complicated in itself, but when you're married across multiple jurisdictions, it's even more complicated. While burning out, while having to pivot my career, while seeing my health deteriorate. And I thought there is something in there, right? There is really a crossroad between professional burnout, relationship deterioration, and health decline. And I think it's no coincidence that one would really struggle to keep up their energy level with work while struggle to keep up their energy level in their marriage or in their dating life, whether they're single or in a committed relationship, but also keep up their health. And I think when once one is deteriorating, it creates a chain reaction whereby
Yeah.
all goes wrong. I remember my first medical diagnosis was general anxiety disorder, which then led to being diagnosed with insomnia, which then led a few months later to being divorced, right? So
Wow.
nothing is really not connected.
Yeah. It does. It's a catalyst, isn't it? A chain
It
reaction
is.
and it carries on. I think you just get, it's a mindset as well. And the more of these things happen, then the body, there's a famous book called The Body Knows the Score, isn't there? Have you heard
Yes.
of that? It's a famous
But it
book.
keeps the score. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it,
yeah.
yes. And it just tells you that all these things add up, and you might think you're okay at the time, but suddenly, bang, it just hits you and everything falls apart. And you've been through that. So you lived through that yourself in the relationships as well. And then what happened? How did you heal yourself?
That's a really good question. I knew one thing is that I had many blind spots. So when I was reflecting on having quite an elite education, I wanted to go to one of the top university. I studied law at Cambridge. I studied law at one of the top universities in France, became a dual qualified lawyer. I had all this very solid intellectual pedigree and background. But what I realized is I had a massive gap in my knowledge in terms of self-care, well-being, and relationship. That is not something that one learns in Cambridge, at least not to my knowledge. And, I laugh about it, but to be honest, it's not very funny because when you think about what you learn a lot of intellectual skills and professional skills, but you don't learn a lot of soft skills or relationship skills. At least you're supposed to pick them up from your parents in many respects, but you can be also a little bit misguided sometimes or try your own experience. And I was a bit rebellious, so there was a part of me that wanted to maybe piss off my parents to an extent at one point in my early 20s. Of course, I've changed a lot since then, but they also represented everything ideal. They're a very solid married couple. They've been together for 40 years. They have 4 kids. They're this beautiful family unit. And as wonderful as it is, it's also overwhelming, and it makes you feel that you're never gonna have a marriage as good as the one that you grew up with. So I know that when you come from a childhood of divorcee or being a child that has gone through a divorce, it's difficult as a situation, but it's also very challenging to come from a unit which is so role model like, so ideal that it feels almost out of reach. And so of course my ex-husband, first husband, I picked someone that would be completely different from the model that I'd seen in my family, and of course that didn't work out.
No. How did you get away from it? How did you?
It was quite radical, really. I put geographical distance between us. I
Right.
actually decided to go live in Indonesia and in India
Yeah.
for the better part of a year. So I made a very dramatic change. I went from being a lawyer to going into an ashram to become a
Wow.
meditation teacher and to learn about yoga and to become a therapist and a coach. So the tools that I learned to help others were also the tools that I needed to heal myself. So it was very much, a double effect whereby as I healed, I learned tools that I didn't have in my toolkit, but those were the tools that not only contributed to me getting better psychologically, emotionally, and relationship wise, but
Yeah.
also tools that I could then equip others with. And of course, as life would so do it, as I was teaching yoga in Bali, I came out of the studio and I saw this absolutely gorgeous man walking down the beach, just coming out of the yoga studio, and he's now my future husband. We've been
Wow.
together ever since. So, life
Amazing.
does
Yeah.
provide for wonderful encounters. Even though I had sworn off men for a little while after that period, after my divorce, I just thought I'm going
Yeah.
to Bali on a tropical island to just be on my own. And of course, that's where I met my fiance.
That's true romantic success story there, isn't it? I love that. That's great. I think I've always wanted to go to a retreat and go and study meditation and do yoga for a week on end, but it's
Yeah.
not how life works out. Maybe one day I'll get to do that. Maybe with my wife, that'd be a nice thing to do. But something you said earlier on actually resonated with me. You said how we don't learn these skills of self-care, self-love, communication, relationships. And I think that people should be taught that at school. I really do.
Yes.
And there's a need for this, but no one does. And my son's out there learning algebra. I think there's many more things that are useful to people to learn these deep-rooted these skills. What do you think about that?
I think that we not only don't learn those skills, but we don't actually learn to prioritize them. So one of the things that we learn is okay at a societal level to neglect and sacrifice are the things that make us feel good because they're not really tangible in terms of monetization or prestige or career or awards, right? So we are in a society, and that's not at all a criticism or a judgment call, it's just a factual statement that does really promote status. We're chasing high status, and I'm definitely one that has chased high status from a very early age.
Mm.
But in that chase and in that race, you do learn to sacrifice something that are pretty basic and sometimes as basic as human connection, right? So if, for instance, your husband or your wife or your date thinks that you are more committed to your career than you are to them, that is in the long term going to create a situation which is not probably going to go down very well. So if you are dating and you're constantly canceling because you have a deadline, and it may be very true, right? I'm not at all suggesting that you're saying that to make an excuse, but if you're canceling once, twice, three times in a row because you're saying, well, I'm stuck in the office, I have to stay in late at work, however true that might be, the person in front of you is not going to feel very special. I did that with my ex-husband for years and years and years, right? And there is a cumulative effect. So I hear a lot of burnout and a lot of dating burnout from time-pressed professional that find it challenging enough to have time for a meal, to even eat dinner, let alone thinking about planning a date. That
Yeah.
is overwhelming in itself.
It is. It's about prioritizing what's important. And we'll talk about that in your podcast, won't we? That's coming up. Just a
Absolutely.
little teaser there. Now, for those that aren't sure if they're struggling with burnout or not, what are the early signs that someone can identify that they are getting burnout in relationships or dating?
Such a good question. I'm really glad that you've asked. There is behavior changes at multiple levels. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of ones. The first one is if you notice some behaviors that are changing around your daily habits. So for instance, you used to be someone that liked to have a glass of wine on a Friday or Saturday night because you like a good celebration with your friends, but now suddenly you find yourself opening a bottle of wine on your own on a Monday night because you're super stressed out, and that's become your new sleep strategy at, say, midnight. Not so great. If you're noticing that you used to eat relatively healthy, but now your go-to formula is to press a button to get delivery because you don't have time, and your best friend at night at 1 a.m. is your ice cream or your pizza because you're stress snacking through your anxiety, and when you think about your to-do list, you actually go for a cookie, again, that's a behavioral change. If your emotions are deteriorating to a point where things that used to bring you joy feel like a burden, and this is really relevant to dating, right? So I recently had a burnout intervention with a brilliant professional, beautiful London professional, very vibrant woman, absolutely charming, and she told me that actually she used to feel a sense of excitement about dating, like that kind of butterfly, like dating was a privilege, right? That first date feeling, she would say. And then suddenly it became oh Lord, having to go to a date, it's such a chore, and I have to dress up and I have to pick up this. And I saw a shift and I thought, well, how interesting. Do you hear how something that used to be like, oh, I get to wear a dress, I get to do my makeup, I get to pick my favorite shoes, and now it's, I have to, right? So if things that used to feel like I get to are now I have to, that's something to watch out for. Right.
Yeah, that's so true. People forget the dating space to be fun. One of my many catchphrases that I say. And if it stops being fun, that means you're not enjoying it. If you're not enjoying it and it feels like a chore, as you're suggesting, then you're not going to have a good date anyway. It's going to rub off on the person you're meeting. So you're right. I think things can become tiring after a while. And the more tiring you become, the more self-fulfilling it becomes, doesn't it? Because then you get more and more drained, and then you have less energy to want to go out, and you're less likely to go and talk to new people, and it goes round and round and round in a circle. So what steps can somebody take to overcome that?
So the first thing that I would suggest is to do a bit of a value map to really understand how often do you connect your values to your action. I know values are often over talked about and they feel a bit sort of theoretical, sentimental, and fluffy, but I have a sort of an audit system that enables you to calibrate your values and to connect them to an action plan. So it's a bit more of a tangible framework. So here is what I would love our audience to do is I would like you to map out what are values that you currently live by and act upon. So vis-a-vis your work, those may be wealth creation, those may be promotion, those may be contribution, being of service. It could be getting closer to your promotion. It could be success, wealth, all of those great values, wonderful. They're work ethic based value. And then I would like you to map out how many actions do you take daily or weekly to connect your work ethic as values to your life. And you'll notice that you find many, because every day you're working, you're connecting your work ethics values with your action. But now I want you to map out your personal life values. I'll give you some example. It could be health and well-being. It could be vitality. It could be curiosity. It could be creativity. It could be spontaneity. It could be family. It could be family planning if you don't have yet a family or are no longer connected with your current family. It could be parenting. It could be community. It could be fun. It could be adventure. Now, how many actions do you take weekly or daily to embody those personal life values? And you may find not so many. In simple terms, burnout is the constant sacrifice and neglect of things that you know would make you deeply happy and connect you with your value, but you deem unimportant because you are under this illusion that something else to do with work has priority up until a point, because we all have a sort of shelf life of how long we can sacrifice our personal values for. If it's health you're sacrificing, I did. For many years, my strategy was no sleep. Who has time for that? No sleep, more work. Excellent strategy. I can bill more hours. I can progress faster into my career. I can get my promotion. Excellent idea. Well, wonderful, right? Except you're going to end up in a hospital one day or the next. So, and then the amount of clients that I've had, not to bring too much doom and glooms, but it is important to talk about it. Cardiovascular incidents, infertility as well, because we've pushed our bodies to such stress and chronic stress for years. I have more and more cases of patients, whether male or females, that are mid-30s, early 40s, and they're getting heartbreaking diagnosis that they're no longer fertile, or they're struggling with IVF or struggling to conceive, right?
Yeah.
So all of those actually are signals that you have neglected your well-being. And it can be small adjustments, small steps. So for instance, when I did my value map and I realized that what I sacrificed most and neglected most was my health and well-being, I made sure that every week I would connect a very simple action to a value that was important to me. And I have to be honest, health and well-being did not used to be in my value map. So if it's not even in your orbit, no wonder you're sacrificing it. I have dating clients that tell me, oh, I'm not finding love. And I say, well, is love in your values? Is romance in your value map? If you don't know what you want, it's going to be really hard to take action towards getting it, right? Romance is one of my dominant values, but it's not enough to have it as a theoretical value. Every week, however busy I am, however busy my fiance is, we sit down and we curate and create and plan an action, however small that might be, that will connect us towards embodying romance.
I love that. That's so true. One of the first things I ever do with my clients is to go over the values at the start. And it's interesting what you said, because they might say, I've got these values. My values are kindness or gratitude. Then I say, that's great, but how are you actually demonstrating that in your life? What are you doing towards that? It's not some magical list you're just going to write down. You've got to embody these qualities. If you can embody all these different things like kindness and being gratitude and all the other ones that come along, then you'll be more attractive anyway. And that's going to help you work out what you want. But values are very, very important, because you have to have someone with similar values. Otherwise, you're not going to be in the best connection when you do meet them. And that's an important part of this. But this also ties into another question I was thinking, which is about how does self-worth tie into the whole sense of burnout as well? Because sometimes people think they're not good enough, and that's going to cause burnout, isn't it?
Absolutely, such a good question. I really think that when it comes to burnout, there is a correlation between increased risk and burnout and decreased self-confidence or self-worth. And particularly if you're working in a profession that might be financially very rewarding, but psychologically very belittling. So you could be working at an organization that pays you really well, but makes you feel pretty shit. Sorry to be blunt, but you can have both at the same time. You can have a very big bonus and a very big payout and feel pretty miserable at night. I know that because
You've
that's
been there. Yeah.
that's what I felt for years. So I know this from first-hand experience, but also from second-hand experience, having these archetypes and profile in my clientele and my patients and clients. So this is really important to actually audit what is it that you're searching, because if you are looking for something that is, or rather, if you're working towards something that is constantly making you feel a little less good about yourself, is it truly what you really need to pursue? And very often I see, whether it's female or male, if somebody has been knocked down in their confidence, for example, they didn't get the promotion, or somebody else got a promotion because their organization is extremely political, and we know many of those organizations, right? And they didn't get promoted, or they didn't get a bonus, or they didn't get positive feedback, they can really feel pretty bad about themselves. And yes, they may be technically progressing on paper, but they're not really feeling that sense of progress at work. And how does that impact? Well, if they are in a relationship, they're going to start to bring some of that anxiety into the relationship, which is often not going to be constructive to the relationship. That's when I see a lot of relationship coaching interventions. Or they would not be in a relationship, they will be in a dating status situation, and they're actually going to date below their standards. And that's problematic in itself, because if you date down, then you're going to have a life that is downgraded, right? If you constantly think that you're less worthy than you are going to attract or seek a mate that is not going to be really of your standard and your values, and then you're going to attract problems that actually are not really problems that you would have had in your life if you picked somebody with higher quality standards effectively.
Yeah, that's true. I think you have to be with someone who's an equal, someone you're going to grow with as you go forwards. And that's important, because if you're both, I don't really believe in leagues in terms someone's better than another person, but I believe that we have different values and different interests and different things to offer. But it's the growth, isn't it? The growth together. That's what's really, really important. And there are a lot of people out there who are in relationships and they are burnt out with the relationship, and the passion has gone, the romance has gone, as you mentioned. How can you reignite that?
You really need to actually schedule it. I believe in scheduling romance, and I know that sounds almost paradoxical. I've had a lot of pushback. People say, "But that's not sexy." And even my fiance at first, when I thought, "Well, we should Google Calendar our date nights," thought that was a little funny. Didn't think I was actually serious about it, but I did mean it. And for a very simple reason. Number one is I knew that if it wasn't scheduled, I wouldn't make it happen because I live by my schedule. And number two, past experience, I know that in my previous marriage, I didn't schedule time for my partner. And what happened is I filled it with work instead. Right? So if you know your personality type and you're type A, driven, ambitious, wonderful qualities, something you should be proud of. There is nothing wrong with that. However, it does mean that you are, as a result of being so ambitious and driven, prone to neglect other aspects of your life, including love, romance, relationship, and nurturing self-care, and things that are perhaps more relaxing or more loving than work, right? So I know I am in that category. So I know that to maintain healthy relationships, and that includes my family and my friendship circle as well, I need to actually plan, schedule, and apply the same level of diligence that I do to those plans as I would a work meeting. And if it doesn't sound sexy to people, well, you know what I would say to that? It may not be sexy, but it works. And in the long term, I think that's what's most important.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I do the same thing. I have to. I've got a busy life, busy family life. You have to make time for your loved ones in life, and booking it in my diary, that's important. I went out for brunch yesterday with my wife. She took me out. We haven't done that for a while. It's in the diary. If we didn't get it in the diary, it's not going to happen, because the school holidays were there, and the school holidays delays this. You have to make sure you put these things in and work out what's most important to you, and it is prioritizing. And It doesn't need to be every week, but as often as you can. And that's it. And burnout and passion is within you. And doing the same thing over and over again is definition of madness, as they say. But you have to do new things you both enjoy, to have new conversations and new adventures as you go out there. Because
Mm.
that's what romance is. It doesn't need to be anything too expensive. You can just go for a walk with your partner, go somewhere nice and hold hands. That's an important thing to do. That's what romance is.
I actually love that you just said that because I think very often we over glamorize the importance of expansive first dates and
Mm,
dinner and champagnes, etc. And yes, they have their time and place, and that can be very exciting. But personally, I would say that healthy first dates are actually much more fundamentals in terms of sharing values. So, for instance, I just told you that I met my fiance through yoga. And although that might seem like a cute story, what is a lot more revealing, and one of the reasons why we have been together for so many years and we are in such a well functioning relationship, is because through meeting at a yoga studio, we shared one value in common at that point, which was health optimization, well being,
yeah.
right? And actually, some of our first dates were long walks on the beach and going to yoga classes holding hands and doing things that may be less conventional than your dinner and champagne.
Yeah.
So think outside the box. I've had a really fun interaction with a couple that said they took their date out for pickleball and they had so much fun. They took their date out for a horse riding adventure. Of course, you would need to know if the person can horse ride, but I think we need to think outside the sort of traditional dinner and champagne and drinks because, in many ways, that is very conventional and it's not necessarily a reflection of your values. So, going for a walk, going in nature can be very sensorial, can actually bring you an opportunity to be intimate quicker, I would suggest, because public dates, dinner, alcohol as well. I personally don't think that associating alcohol with a first date is a particularly brilliant idea because when you are a little bit tipsy, you may not be making the best decision. So I love the fact that the first time I met my fiance, we were sober out of yoga. The only
Yeah.
high we had was on breath work, right? So you make sharper decision and you are also more capable of identifying red flags. If you're getting pissed on your first date, you may be blind to red flags that would have been apparent to you if you were sober. So I'm not saying not have fun, but maybe first, second date sober, third date with a glass of champagne.
It's about the balance in life, and I think
Yes.
it's fine to have one or two drinks, but leave it at that because otherwise you can make bad decisions and things can go the opposite of what you're expecting them to do. So always about balance, and I don't think people are drinking less and less alcohol nowadays, including me. I hardly ever drink, so it goes to my head if I have a drink. A glass of champagne, I'd be drunk. I think nowadays with that
Well,
overall.
what can I say? I'm French and
You are.
I'm from the vineyard, so I'll be honest here. I do love my wine.
Like it. Well, that's you. That's absolutely fine to do that. I don't. I used to like my wine a long time ago, but I don't because I'm trying to be healthier overall. Now we're coming towards the end of the podcast. I want to ask you in a minute about your daily habits and that you do. I'll ask everyone that question. But first of
Yeah.
all, I'd love it if you have any sort of guided exercise you'd like to just share with my listeners right now. We did talk about this purely because I want to hear your relaxing accent to do this. But do you have anything you'd like to do?
Of course. I would like to introduce you to a technique that combines a little bit of very short hypnotherapy and visualization, whereby I would like you to think about your previous date that didn't go so well. And I would like you to think about what an ideal date could look like. And I would like us to bridge that gap. How does that sound?
That sounds amazing. Go for it.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. How much time do we have?
3 or 4 minutes. Is that enough? Yeah.
Sounds wonderful.
Can
All
do
right.
that. I'm going to close my eyes and listen to you. So, okay,
Yes.
you take
Okay,
control. Go for it.
so
Yeah.
I would like you to take a nice deep breath in through your nose. Inhale, feel my voice. Inhale fully and exhale through your mouth. And again, inhale with me for 1, 2. And exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale for 1, 2. And exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. I would like you to imagine now that you have the ability to make some tweaks and adjustments into your behavior just by looking at what you did in the past. And specifically, I would like you to bring to the forefront of your mind, keeping your eyes closed, a dating situation that might not have gone in the best possible way. And in truth, it may be in part due to some of your behaviors or things that you did or things that you said that might have been suboptimal. So we're not going to be too harsh on ourselves. This is not about judging ourselves. I would like you to just focus on how you acted, reacted, and behaved. And I would like you to see if you can make any adjustments. So if you were to be in that situation again, what would you say differently? How would you behave differently? I would like you to look at your posture, look at the way you interacted with the person in front of you, your date. And I would like you to give yourself the opportunity to relive the situation, this time in the most optimal way. So imagine having the opportunity to relive this moment and to do it in the best possible way. You know that feeling when you got home that night and you went, oh, I wish I didn't say that. I wish I didn't do that. Well, now is the time. In your mind, you can edit it, modify it, tweak it up until the point where you behave, speak, act in the way that is going to generate the best possible outcome for you, your date, and your love life. What does that feel like for you? What does that look like for you? Can you make sure that you see it and feel it? And notice the difference in the outcome. Maybe that ends with a kiss, that kiss that didn't happen. Maybe that ends with a second date. Maybe the outcome is a long, beautiful, loving relationship. Take a moment now to see that positive future, that next step, that what if. Build in your head the most positive outcome, that deep, deep, deep desire that you have vis-a-vis your love life. And see it happening, unfold it in the best possible way. Visualize it. See yourself in that optimized, beautiful relationship, the one that you seek, the one that you deeply, deeply desire. What does that look like and feel like for you? Good. And notice how you act and react and behave in that beautiful relationship. And see if you can take a mental image of that and notice the difference, the subtle changes that you have had to make to get there. Good. You're doing a great job. Keep breathing in and out for me. Take a nice deep inhale in through the nose for 1, 2. Out through the mouth for 1, 2, 3, 4. And I would like you to now let go of that visual, knowing that at any point you can come back to that beautiful, positive, constructive vision of your future vis-a-vis your love life. Hold it in a very special place in your head or in your heart, but letting it go for now, coming back to the present moment in your full body, bringing back the sensations in your fingertips, your toes through gentle movement, subtle stretches to anchor yourself back into the present. And on your next deep exhale, you may very gently let go of any of the visuals that we played with and come back to the now and open your eyes very gently. Well done.
Wow. Thank you for that. I tranced out a little bit there. That's the whole, always do. I feel it's very hard on a podcast to to completely shut off, but I just did, which was really cool. Thank you for that.
That was
Right.
short.
If-
A full session is at least 30 minutes to 1 hour. So
I can imagine you'd be amazing at doing that. And I think, well, I'll probably be asleep in 2 minutes, which would be really cool. Very quick question for you. We're coming towards the end of the podcast. Tell us about, do you have any sort of daily habits and routines that you'd like to stick to?
yes, I do. I do like to start my day relatively slowly mentally, but active physically. So I like to start my day quite differently to how I finish my day. As an ex-insomniac that suffer from chronic back pain, I learned that active physical movement early in the morning is fundamental because I am very, very guilty of loving to be busy with work. And I will struggle to make the time if I don't do it first thing in the morning. So I'm a runner. I wasn't always a runner, but I became one. And I love to get that done first thing in the morning. So I like to be active with a mind that is relatively not active. By that, I mean, I avoid listening to engaging podcasts during my runs. At most, I would listen to perhaps some music, but I will keep it relatively non-intellectually stimulating. So active body, relatively slowly active mind. And then at night, I'll do the opposite. Before my desired bedtime, I don't just go to bed hoping for the best. Because of my background as an ex-insomniac, I do self-hypnosis and or meditation. So I will have a relatively active mind with hypnosis or meditation with a very relaxed body, non-active body. So I go completely reverse to my morning. So I will have a stimulating hypnosis. People think that if you have intrusive thoughts, the best thing you can do is try to turn them off. I actually think that if you have intrusive thoughts, the best thing you can do is replace the thoughts with other thoughts. And that's called hypnosis. So that's what I do at night. I listen to a hypnosis and I stay very, very still so that my body can literally melt into the bed and help me fall asleep. So those are my strategies.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. That's great.
You're
Very
welcome.
powerful stuff there. Brilliant. Now, very last question. How can somebody find out more about you?
The first step will be to tune into the Charlene Gisele show, where you can actually listen to some of my sleep meditation. So that would be wonderful. And the second step would be to visit my website, Charlene Gisele, where you would find a lot of advice and recording, meditations, sleep aids, and burnout recommendation.
Fantastic. I'll put the links also in the show notes, of course. I will let you go. Thank you so much. I will be switching this back on in about 5 minutes and we'll be talking again on your podcast and we'll continue the
can't wait.
conversation. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to give you a free copy of my latest book, which you can download right now from my website, jamespreece.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could share the love by taking a few seconds to write a positive review on the iTunes store right now. See you next time.